On my day off, she scheduled a lunch with the girls. She only came back at night and said she lost track of time. But the credit card statement told a different story.
Quase sem espaço de armazenamento. Se você ficar sem espaço, não poderá salvar arquivos no Drive nem fazer backup no Google Photos. On my day off, she scheduled a lunch with the girls. She only came back at night and said she lost track of time. But the credit card statement told a different story. Before I share my story, I'd love for you to comment where you're watching from so I can get to know you better. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll receive more inspiring stories like this one. I had finally gotten a day off after working 14 straight days. Construction management isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills, and the current project was demanding every minute of my time. So when Olivia mentioned she had plans for a lunch with the girls on my rare free day, I was disappointed, but understood. After 10 years of marriage, you learn to compromise. I won't be late, she promised, kissing me on the cheek that morning. Probably back by 3 we can still have dinner together. I spent the day catching up on sleep, then tackling the list of house repairs I'd been neglecting. By 4 o'clock, there was still no sign of Olivia. No text, no call. By 6, I started to worry and called her cell, straight to voicemail. At 8, she finally walked through the door, looking flustered but radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her dark hair was perfectly styled, and she was wearing an outfit I didn't recognize. "George, sorry I'm so late," she said, hanging her coat in the hallway. "We lost track of time. You know how it gets when Lindsay starts talking about her divorce." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Olivia had always been social, always had her circle of friends, but lately these girls' lunches had been happening more frequently and lasting longer each time. "I saved you some pasta," I said, forcing a smile. "Must have been some lunch." She laughed a little too nervously. "You have no idea. I'm actually not hungry. I think we ordered everything on the menu." That night, while Olivia showered, I sat in our dimly lit kitchen staring at my phone. Something didn't feel right. Call it intuition or just plain suspicion, but I found myself opening our shared credit card app. We'd always been transparent about finances. It was one of the foundations of our marriage, or so I thought. I scrolled through the day's transactions and there it was. Not a restaurant charge as I'd expected, but a hotel bill. The Grand Westlake. One of the most expensive hotels in the city, known for its discreet service and luxurious accommodations. The charge had been processed at 3:42 p.m., right when she should have been heading home to me. My hands began to shake. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe the girls had decided to get a day room to continue their get-together. Maybe they'd gone for drinks at the hotel bar. But deep down, I knew better. I continued scrolling and found another charge from earlier that morning, a lingerie store I'd never heard of, $200 for lunch with the girls. The bathroom door opened, and Olivia emerged in her silk robe, her skin flushed from the hot water. She smiled at me, but it faltered when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice suddenly cautious. I didn't plan what came next. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "How was the Grand Westlake? I hear their lunch menu is spectacular." The color drained from her face. For a moment she stood frozen, then quickly composed herself. "Oh, that," she said with a forced laugh. "We decided to move to the hotel restaurant when the place we planned got too crowded. Lindsay's treat. She insisted on picking up the tab, but they needed a card on file. I forgot to mention it." The lie came so easily to her that it made me wonder how many others I'd believed without question. Had I been blind all this time? "And the lingerie store?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Her eyes widened slightly. "That was a gift for Melissa's bachelorette next month. I wasn't going to tell you because it's kind of risque." Another lie. Melissa had gotten married last year. I remembered because we'd fought about the expense of attending the destination wedding. "Olivia," I said, setting my phone down on the counter. "Melissa's been married for over a year." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground was about to give way beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew, my marriage, my wife, my life, suddenly felt like a carefully constructed illusion, now cracking before my eyes. Olivia's face transformed, moving from shock to calculation to remorse in seconds. Her eyes welled with tears. Real or practiced, I couldn't tell anymore. "George, please," she whispered. "It's not what you think." But somehow, deep down, I knew it was exactly what I thought, and nothing would ever be the same again. That night I didn't push Olivia further. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe I needed time to process the earthquake that had just hit my life. We went to bed with the weight of unspoken words crushing the space between us. I pretended to sleep, while my mind raced through every moment of our marriage, wondering if there had been signs I'd missed, or worse, ignored. Morning came after a sleepless night. Olivia was unusually attentive, making my favorite breakfast, asking about my plans for the day, acting like nothing had happened. I played along, kissing her goodbye as she left for her marketing job at a local firm. Once the door closed behind her, I sat at our kitchen table, hands trembling. What I did next wasn't something I'd ever imagined doing in my marriage. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared accounts, email, cloud storage, phone records, services we'd always had open access to because we'd supposedly had nothing to hide. The phone records spoke first. Dozens of calls to a number I didn't recognize, always during her lunch breaks or on afternoons when she told me she was working late. The calls never appeared in her recent calls list on her phone. She'd been deleting them. I wrote down the number, but didn't call it. Not yet. Next, her work calendar, which we shared because our schedules were often hectic. There they were, the obvious gaps. Client meetings scheduled near hotels, days marked working remotely, that coincided with times she'd come home looking refreshed and somehow distant. One particularly glaring entry caught my eye: team building retreat scheduled for next weekend, a trip she hadn't mentioned once. But it was her supposedly forgotten cloud backup that delivered the final blow. Photos she thought were deleted from her phone still lingered there. Pictures of her and a man I'd never seen. They weren't explicit, but they were intimate in a way that only happens between lovers. His arm around her waist, her looking up at him with an expression I thought had once been reserved for me. Date stamps going back over a year. I sat back, feeling physically ill. All those nights I'd worked late to provide for us, she'd been building a separate life. All those weekends I'd spent fixing up our home, she'd been sharing herself with someone else. I wanted to confront her immediately, to call her and demand answers. But a strange calm settled over me. If she'd been able to lie so effortlessly last night, what would stop her from continuing? I needed more than suspicions. I needed the complete picture. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I never thought I'd be, a husband investigating his own wife. I noted the patterns: girls' lunches always on Tuesdays, late meetings on Thursdays. I checked our credit card statements from the past 6 months, finding hotel charges disguised as business expenses, gifts purchased that I'd never received. I discovered the man's name was Daniel. He worked at a client company where Olivia had led a marketing campaign last year. He was divorced, no children. I found this all out without ever letting Olivia know I suspected anything beyond that first night's confrontation, which she seemed to think had blown over. She became more careful with the credit card, switching to cash or perhaps another card I didn't know about. But her patterns remained. The Tuesday absences, the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne, the secretive smiles at text messages she quickly deleted. I took a day off work without telling her and followed her to a cafe downtown. I watched from across the street as she met him, as his hand covered hers on the table, as she laughed in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. They left together, walking to a nearby apartment building. She didn't emerge for 3 hours. That night, when she told me about her productive day at work, I simply nodded and asked if she wanted wine with dinner. The disconnect between the woman sitting across from me and the one I'd watched earlier that day was staggering. It wasn't just the affair that was breaking me, it was the realization that I might never have truly known her. "Is everything okay?" she asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You've been quiet lately." I looked into her eyes I'd once thought I could read like my favorite book, and saw nothing but carefully constructed concern. "Just tired," I replied. "This project is really taking it out of me." She nodded sympathetically. Poor baby. Maybe you need a break. We could go away next month, just the two of us. Next month. After her supposed team-building retreat, that I now knew was almost certainly a weekend away with Daniel, the audacity of it made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. Maybe, I said. Let's see how things go. Later that night, as Olivia slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of everything I'd discovered pressing down on me. I had all the evidence I needed now. The question was no longer whether my wife was faithful. She clearly wasn't. The question had become, what was I going to do about it? The man I'd been a month ago wouldn't recognize the man I was becoming, calculating, patient, methodical in my pain. I'd discovered a capacity for deception in myself that mirrored Olivia's, hiding my knowledge behind smiles and routine kisses. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would end this charade. I would lay out everything I knew and watch as the carefully constructed lies came crashing down. I would finally see the real woman I had married, not the one I thought I knew, but the one who had been hiding in plain sight all along. I spent the morning preparing. It sounds strange, but confronting your wife about an affair feels like preparing for the most important business presentation of your life. I took the day off, telling my supervisor I had a family emergency. In a way, I suppose I did. I arranged the evidence on our dining room table. Not everything, just enough. Phone records, hotel receipts, a few photos from her cloud backup showing her with Daniel, the fake team-building retreat registration that I'd found in her email. Methodical, organized, like building a case. By noon, I'd finished several cups of coffee but couldn't eat. My stomach was a knot of dread and strange anticipation. I texted Olivia, "Need to talk, important. Please come home early." Her response came quickly. "Everything okay? Can it wait until tonight?" "No," I replied, "it can't." She arrived at 2, looking concerned but also irritated at having her day interrupted. When she saw me sitting at the dining table, her expression shifted to something more guarded. "What's going on?" she asked, setting her purse down. Then her eyes fell on the papers spread before me, and I watched the blood drain from her face. "George, what is this?" "Sit down, Olivia." For a moment I thought she might refuse, might turn and walk out the door, but she sat, her movements stiff, her eyes never leaving the evidence of her betrayal. "How long have you been seeing Daniel?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Her head snapped up at his name, eyes widening. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I don't. I cut her off sharply. "I've watched you meet him. I've seen the pictures. I've tracked the hotel charges. Just don't lie to me anymore." The silence stretched between us, heavy with a decade of shared history now tainted by deception. Finally she sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. 14 months, she said quietly. 14 months, nearly a third of our marriage. While I'd been working overtime to afford the house renovations she wanted, while I'd been planning our anniversary trip, while I'd been building a life with her, she'd been building a separate one with someone else. Why? The question came out more broken than I intended. Olivia looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. It just happened. We were working late on the campaign and there was this connection. A connection, I repeated flatly, and that was worth throwing away 10 years of marriage? It wasn't like that, she protested, leaning forward. I never meant to hurt you. I love you, George. It was just different with him, exciting, new. So I'm what, the reliable old husband? The foundation you stand on while you seek excitement elsewhere? Anger flared, hot and sudden. No, it's complicated. You've been so focused on work, on the house. Sometimes I felt like we were just roommates going through the motions. I laughed bitterly. So this is my fault. I worked those hours for us, Olivia, for the life you said you wanted. She had the grace to look ashamed. I'm not saying it's your fault. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Tears began forming in her eyes. But it doesn't have to mean the end of us. We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start fresh. Her words washed over me like a wave, but I felt nothing but a cold, detached clarity. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was 14 months of deliberate choices, hundreds of lies, thousands of moments of betrayal. The retreat next weekend, I said. Were you going with him? She hesitated, which was answer enough. Cancel it, I said. I will. Right now. She reached for her phone, eager to show compliance. And you'll end it with him? Completely. Yes, today. I swear. I studied her face, the face I'd woken up to for a decade, now somehow belonging to a stranger. Why should I believe you? You've lied to me for over a year. You've looked me in the eyes and lied without hesitation. How do I ever trust anything you say again? Her tears fell freely now. Because I don't want to lose you. Because I know I made a horrible mistake, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. Part of me wanted to believe her, the part that remembered our wedding day, the promises we'd made, the life we'd built. But another part, a growing part, recognized the performance for what it was. Show me your phone, I said. She blinked. What? Your phone. Give it to me. Reluctantly, she handed it over. I scrolled through her messages. Nothing from Daniel, as expected. She'd deleted them all. Call him, I said, handing the phone back. Right now. End it while I listen. Her fingers trembled as she took the phone. For a moment I thought she'd refuse, but she dialed, put it on speaker. He answered on the second ring. Hey, beautiful. Missing me already? His voice filled our dining room, casual and intimate. The voice of a man who knew my wife in ways that should have been only mine. Olivia's eyes met mine, filled with shame. Daniel, we need to stop seeing each other. It's over. A pause. Is everything okay? You sound strange. My husband knows. I'm with him now. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Well, that's unfortunate. His tone had changed, grown colder. Call me when you're alone. We should talk properly. There's nothing to talk about, she said, voice stronger now. It's over. Please don't contact me again. She ended the call, looking at me with pleading eyes. See? It's done. But I knew better. This was just the beginning of a much longer, more painful journey, one that might not end with us still together. The next 2 weeks passed in a fog of pain and awkward attempts at reconciliation. Olivia became the perfect wife, attentive, affectionate, transparent. She shared her location, offered her phone for inspection without being asked, came straight home after work. She suggested counseling, bought self-help books on rebuilding trust after infidelity, cried genuine tears when she thought I wasn't looking. I went through the motions, attending one uncomfortable therapy session where I said little while Olivia sobbed about her momentary weakness. I nodded when she talked about our future, but inside I felt nothing but a hollow ache where my trust had once lived. I verified that she'd cancelled her retreat with Daniel. I checked her phone regularly, finding nothing suspicious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was now trapped in a performance, both hers and my own. Then came Sunday dinner with her family. I'd always gotten along well with Olivia's parents, Richard and Margaret, and her younger sister Claire. They'd welcomed me from the beginning, and Sunday dinners at their sprawling suburban home had become a tradition over the years. This Sunday felt different. As we drove to their house, Olivia squeezed my hand. Everything will be fine, she said, just like always. But nothing was just like always anymore. The moment we walked in, I sensed the tension. Margaret's hug was stiff, Richard barely met my eyes, and Claire studied me with something like pity. They knew, somehow they already knew. Dinner was a masterclass in uncomfortable silence, broken only by forced small talk about the weather and Richard's golf game. Finally, as Margaret served coffee in the living room, Richard cleared his throat. George, we need to talk about what's been going on. I set my cup down carefully. I wasn't aware that my marriage was open for group discussion. Margaret leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Olivia is our daughter. When she's hurting, we hurt too. I glanced at Olivia, who stared at her lap. I see. And did Olivia tell you why she's hurting? She made a mistake, Claire interjected. A serious one, yes, but still just a mistake. People in long marriages sometimes stray, it happens. I felt a chill run down my spine. Were they actually defending her? It happens, I repeated slowly. So I should just accept that my wife had a 14-month affair because It happens? Richard sighed heavily. No one is saying that, George. But carrying resentment won't heal anything. Marriage takes forgiveness. Forgiveness, I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Did Olivia tell you she only ended it because I caught her? That she was planning a weekend getaway with him? That this wasn't some one-night mistake, but over a year of deliberate deception? The room fell silent. Margaret reached over to take Olivia's hand, offering comfort to her cheating daughter rather than acknowledging my pain. We just think, Richard continued carefully, that perhaps you could be more understanding. Marriages have survived worse. You both invested 10 years in this relationship. I stared at him in disbelief. Understanding? Should I be understanding about the countless times she lied to my face, about the money from our joint account spent on hotel rooms with another man, about the complete violation of my trust? George, please, Olivia whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Perfect tears right on cue. Claire leaned forward. Look, no one's perfect. Olivia made a terrible choice, but she's committed to making things right. Doesn't that count for something? I looked around the room at these people who had been my family for a decade, feeling suddenly completely alone. They weren't interested in justice or accountability, only in preserving the appearance of their daughter's perfect life. Has it occurred to any of you to ask how I'm doing? My voice was quiet but steady. To wonder what it feels like to discover your entire life has been a lie. To realize the person you trusted most was living a double life. Margaret had the grace to look uncomfortable. Of course we care about you, George. We always have. But Olivia is our daughter. And that makes her betrayal acceptable? Not acceptable, Richard said firmly, but forgivable. At least it should be if you truly love her. The implication hung in the air. If I couldn't forgive Olivia, I never really loved her. The ultimate manipulation. I stood up, suddenly needing air. I think I'll wait in the car. Olivia reached for my hand. George, please, they're just trying to help. I pulled away. No, they're trying to pressure me into pretending nothing happened, into accepting that my feelings don't matter, as long as their daughter gets what she wants. I walked out, ignoring Richard's calls for me to come back and discuss this reasonably. In the driveway, I leaned against our car, breathing deeply in the cool evening air. A few minutes later, Claire came out. They mean well, she said, offering me a cigarette I didn't take. Do they? Because it sounds like they want me to accept being cheated on as just another bump in the road. Claire sighed, lighting her own cigarette. You want the truth? They knew, about Daniel, before you did. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. What? Not the whole time, she clarified quickly. Olivia confided in Mom about 6 months ago. She was feeling guilty but wasn't ready to end it. Mom advised her to be discreet until she figured out what she really wanted. The betrayal expanded, metastasized. Not just Olivia, but her entire family had conspired to keep me in the dark about my own marriage. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Claire exhaled a stream of smoke. Because someone should be honest with you, finally, and because... She hesitated. This isn't the first time. There was someone before Daniel, during your 2nd year of marriage. The ground seemed to drop away completely. Another affair, years ago. How many more had there been that I never discovered? At that moment, Olivia emerged from the house, her parents flanking her like protective guards. Looking at them, this unit that had closed ranks around her betrayal, I realized with startling clarity that I was entirely alone in this fight. And perhaps I always had been. The drive home from Olivia's parents' house was excruciating. She tried several times to break the silence, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Claire's revelation about the earlier affair echoed in my mind, each repetition driving the knife deeper. Not just one betrayal, but a pattern, a history of deception I'd been blind to. George, please say something, Olivia finally pleaded as we pulled into our driveway. I turned off the engine and sat still, staring at our house, the home we'd picked together, renovated together, filled with memories I now questioned. Was there anyone before Daniel? I asked quietly. She stiffened. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean, Olivia. Claire told me about the affair during our 2nd year of marriage. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed it instantly. She had no right to tell me the truth, I interrupted, finally looking at her. Someone had to, since you certainly weren't going to. Tears welled in her eyes. It was a mistake, a stupid, brief mistake that meant nothing. I ended it myself, and I never— How many more? I asked. How many times have you cheated on me? Just twice, she whispered. I swear. Just twice. As if betraying me multiple times somehow made it less devastating than if there had been more. I got out of the car without another word and went inside, straight to our bedroom. I pulled out a suitcase and began throwing in clothes, not even checking what I was packing. Olivia appeared in the doorway, panic crossing her features. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I said simply. No, George, please. She rushed forward, trying to take the suitcase. We can fix this. We've got counseling scheduled. I've ended things with Daniel. I'll do whatever it takes. I paused, looking at her, really looking at her. The woman I'd fallen in love with, who I'd built my life around, who I'd trusted completely. A stranger. The problem, Olivia, is that I don't believe you anymore. I can't. Even if I wanted to, and part of me does, I physically cannot make myself trust anything you say. You don't mean that, she said, voice breaking. You're angry and you have every right to be. But we can rebuild. Other couples have. Other couples haven't had your parents basically tell me I should just accept being cheated on as normal. She shook her head frantically. They didn't mean it like that. They're just worried about me. About us. They knew, Olivia. Your mother knew about Daniel for months and helped you hide it from me. I zipped the suitcase closed with finality. How am I supposed to rebuild a marriage when your entire family conspired to help you deceive me? Where will you go? She asked, tears falling freely now. My brother's. Just for a few days until I figure things out. And then? I paused at the door. I don't know. It was the truth. I had no plan beyond escaping the suffocating weight of betrayal that filled our house. I just knew I couldn't spend another night pretending. Another night watching Olivia perform the role of remorseful wife while I wondered what else she might be hiding. My brother Mark welcomed me without questions that night, setting me up in his spare room with a beer and the simple words, "Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here." I wasn't ready that night or the next. I called in sick to work, something I'd never done without legitimate illness, and spent the day staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from my marriage, wondering how I'd missed the signs. Olivia called and texted constantly. I responded only to say I was safe but needed space. Her messages grew increasingly desperate. She'd changed. She'd do anything. She couldn't live without me. I turned my phone off. On the third day at Mark's, I finally told him everything. He listened without interruption, his expression darkening when I mentioned Claire's revelation about the earlier affair and the family's intervention. "What do you want to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me still loves her. 10 years isn't easy to walk away from. And the other part? The other part knows I'll never trust her again. I'll always be checking her phone, questioning her whereabouts, wondering if every business trip is really what she says it is. That's not a marriage. It's a surveillance operation." Mark nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you deserve better. Everyone does." That night I made a decision, not in a dramatic moment of clarity, but in the quiet darkness of my brother's guest room, listening to the sound of rain against the windows. I would end my marriage, not out of vengeance or spite, but out of self-preservation. I couldn't rebuild something that had been fundamentally broken from the beginning. The next morning I contacted a lawyer. I didn't tell Olivia yet. I needed to understand my options first. The consultation was eye-opening. Michigan's no-fault divorce laws meant I didn't need to prove her infidelity, but documentation of her affairs could potentially impact property division. The lawyer advised me to gather financial records, especially related to any money spent on the affairs. I returned to our house the following week, while Olivia was at work. The familiar spaces felt different now, tainted by knowledge I couldn't unknow. I collected important documents, downloaded our financial records, and packed more of my belongings. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. As I was leaving, I noticed our wedding photo hanging in the hallway. Us, young and blissfully ignorant of what lay ahead. I took it down, removed the picture, and folded it into my wallet. Not as a memento of love, but as a reminder to be more careful with my trust in the future. 2 days later, I signed a 6-month lease on a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just a temporary space to rebuild my life. I furnished it minimally, a bed, a couch, a table. It felt empty, but also strangely liberating. A blank slate. I finally responded to Olivia's increasingly frantic messages, agreeing to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. She was already there when I arrived, looking smaller somehow, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Are you coming home?" she asked immediately as I sat down. I placed a large envelope on the table between us. "I'm filing for divorce, Olivia." Her face crumpled. "George, please. I'll do anything." "I know you would," I said quietly. "That's not the issue. The issue is that I can't be the person who stays. I can't be the husband who accepts betrayal as the price of marriage." 1 year later, I stood in my new kitchen, morning sunlight streaming through windows that needed no curtains. No one could see in. I'd bought a small house on the edge of town with a private yard and plenty of space for the woodworking projects that had become my therapy during the divorce. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, relatively smooth by legal standards but emotionally brutal. Olivia had fought it at first, cycling through tactics, tears, promises, anger, guilt, before finally accepting the inevitable. Her family had tried intervening again, Richard even showing up at my workplace to talk sense into me. I'd simply walked past him to my truck and driven away. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Sarah, asking if we were still on for dinner tonight. I smiled as I replied with a simple, "Yes, looking forward to it." Sarah was new in my life, a landscape architect I'd met while renovating my backyard. Our relationship was progressing slowly, deliberately. We were both cautious people with our own reasons for taking things carefully. The doorbell rang, surprising me. I wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the door, I froze at the sight of Olivia standing on my porch. She looked different, thinner, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup. She clutched her purse tightly, knuckles white. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. My first instinct was to refuse, to protect the peace I'd worked so hard to build, but something in her expression, a vulnerability I'd rarely seen during our marriage, made me step aside. She entered hesitantly, eyes taking in the house she'd never seen. "It's nice," she offered. "Very you." "Why are you here, Olivia?" I asked, not unkindly but directly. She sat on the edge of my couch, still clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I heard you're seeing someone." Not what I expected. News travels fast. "Claire saw you two at Riverside Cafe last weekend." Of course. Even in a city this size, it was impossible to completely escape the old connections. "I didn't come to cause problems," she continued quickly. I needed to see you, to say some things I should have said a long time ago." I sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize, really apologize, not the desperate pleas from when you first found out. I'm sorry for betraying you, for lying, for letting my family pressure you. You deserved so much better." I nodded slightly, acknowledging her words without accepting them as absolution. "Second," she continued, "I want you to know I've been getting help. Real help, not just the counseling I suggested to save our marriage. I've been in therapy for 8 months, working on understanding why I did what I did, why I hurt the one person who never would have hurt me." I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to detecting. But for once, she seemed genuine. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said finally. "The thing is, George," she said, tears welling in her eyes, "I don't think I ever really understood what love was supposed to be. My parents' marriage was always about appearances, about maintaining the right image. I watched my father have affairs that my mother pretended not to notice. I thought that was normal, that love was conditional on convenience." Her words settled in the space between us, heavy with implications about our past. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because I need you to know that none of it was your fault. You were a good husband, the best I could have asked for. I just wasn't ready or able to be the wife you deserved." She wiped a tear away. "And because I heard you found someone, and I needed to see for myself that you're okay, that I didn't break you completely." The simple honesty of her statement caught me off guard. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a release of something I'd been holding. "I'm okay," I said softly. It took time, but I'm okay. She nodded, relief evident in her face. "And this new woman, is she good to you?" "Sarah," I supplied, "and yes, she is. We're taking things slow." "Good. You should." Olivia stood, clearly preparing to leave. "There's one more thing. Daniel and I—" It didn't last. He left when things got difficult. "I'm sorry," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. She shrugged. "Don't be. It was karma, I suppose. Anyway, I've moved to Cincinnati. New job, fresh start. I just came back to finalize the sale of the house. Our house, the last remaining tie between us. I'm not dating right now," she continued. "I'm focusing on fixing myself before I try to be with anyone else. My therapist thinks that's wise." "It is," I agreed. At the door, she turned to face me one last time. "I don't expect forgiveness, George. I just hope someday when you think of me, it won't be with pain." After she left, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the clouds drift across the sky. I felt strangely peaceful, as if a wound that had been healing messily had finally been properly cleaned and dressed. That evening, when Sarah arrived for dinner, her warm smile and gentle presence filled my home with a different kind of energy than Olivia's visit had brought. After we ate, I told her about Olivia's unexpected appearance. I'd promised myself no secrets in whatever relationships I built going forward. "How did that make you feel?" Sarah asked, her hand covering mine on the table. I considered the question carefully. Sad for what was lost, relieved it's truly over, and grateful in a way. Grateful? Her eyebrows rose in surprise. If Olivia hadn't shown me who she really was, I might have spent my entire life with someone who didn't truly value me. As painful as it was, that knowledge freed me to find something real. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Still, it must have been difficult seeing her again. "It was," I admitted, "but different than I expected. For the first time, I looked at her and didn't feel that crushing weight of betrayal. I just saw another person, flawed, struggling, trying to find her way just like everyone else." "That's a kind of forgiveness," Sarah observed. "Maybe," I conceded, "not for her sake, but for mine." Later, as we walked through the garden Sarah had helped me design, the evening air warm around us, she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Walking away instead of trying to save your marriage?" I stopped beneath the pergola we'd built together, fairy lights twinkling above us like stars. "No, I needed to learn that sometimes loving yourself means letting go of people who can't love you the way you deserve." She smiled, eyes reflecting the tiny lights. "That's a powerful lesson." "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "There were days I almost went back, just because it seemed easier than rebuilding from scratch. But I realized something important." "What's that?" "Trust isn't just about believing what someone tells you. It's about believing you deserve the truth." I took her hand gently. "And I finally do." In that moment, standing in the garden I'd built after losing everything I thought mattered, I realized that the painful dismantling of my old life hadn't destroyed me. It had cleared the ground for something authentic to grow. The price of truth had been steep, but its value was immeasurable. And as Sarah's fingers intertwined with mine, I understood that the end of one story can be the beginning of a far better one built not on illusions, but on the solid foundation of hard-won wisdom and the courage to start again.